Alberic O'Kelly del Galway. Wait till you hear this guy's full name. Alberic Joseph Rodolphe Marie Robert Ghislain O'Kelly de Galway, descended from John O'Kelly, an Irish-born British Army officer who was given a title of nobility in 1720 in what were then the Austrian Low Countries. And so, chess player O'Kelly was often referred to as Count Alberic O'Kelly del Galway. As a youth, he took lessons from the legendary Akiva Rubinstein, who was institutionalized in Belgium. O'Kelly won the Belgian Chess Championships 13 times between 1937 and 1959. That's 13 times in 22 years. He finished first at Huygens in 1946. In 47, he became one of Europe's leading players, finishing first at Hilversum Zonal. He was a point ahead of Ludek Pachmann and Peter Trifunovic in that one. He was first place, tied with Pirtz at Teplice Sanof. In 48, he finished first at Sao Paulo, ahead of Elis Casas and Rossetto. He finished first at Dortmund in 51. He finished first at a round robin at Utrecht in 1961. He was the third correspondence world champion. Wow, we've seen quite a few world champions of correspondence chess in this program. His title for the World Championship of Correspondence Chess came to him from 1959 to 1962. He was awarded the International Master title in 1950, and then in 1956, he received his Grandmaster title. In 1958, he was awarded the Belgian decoration of the Golden Palm of the Order of the Crown because of his successes and distinctions that he had brought to the nation. And of course, there is a variation of the Sicilian defense named for him, which I'll actually show here in just a moment, because he starts with e4 and Bobby plays the Sicilian defense with pawn c5. Well, after knight f3, Bobby played d6, but O'Kelly's variation is a6 right here. And we've talked about this before, and it has pretty much the same purpose as why it's played in Najdorf's, but he plays it quite early. Now, the most common continuation is the Venice system with c3, but I should mention that a very common line is d4, a very common mistake. And when d4 is played, it's usually curtains for white. But the most common, or most solid, I should say, is c3. And after d5, we get e takes d5, queen takes d5, now pawn d4, knight f6, bishop e2 here, pawn e6, kingside castles, knight c6 right here, bishop e3, c takes the d-man, and the most common continuation from here is c takes d, bishop e7, knight c3, hitting the queen, queen d6, queen d2, and kingside castles. That is your most common line in the O'Kelly variation, which is only relevant to this game because O'Kelly's playing this game. We didn't actually get an O'Kelly variation, but I thought it'd be interesting to show. Instead, Bobby playing his usual d6 here. And on d4, pawn takes pawn, we get an open Sicilian. Knight takes the pawn, knight f6, knight c3, and now a6 is Miguel Najdorf's variation. And you know, Miguel Najdorf, born Moishe Mendel Najdorf, lived from April 15th, 1910 to July 4th, 1997, Polish-born Argentine chess grandmaster, and he was one of the many who was in Argentina for the Olympiad in 1939 when World War II broke out, and he stayed there as a Jew, wanting to avoid persecution, but sadly, his wife, his daughter, his parents, his 4 siblings were all murdered in the Holocaust. Wow. Najdorf did remarry later and had 2 daughters. But as a chess player, he emerged as one of the top players on planet Earth in the 40s and 50s. He tied for first place with Palqueres at Buenos Aires, scoring 8.5 out of 11. In 1941, he finished first, tied with Gideon Stelberg at Buenos Aires, scoring 11 out of 14. In 42, he won at Mar del Plata, again ahead of Stelberg, 13.5 out of 17. In 43, he won at Rosario. In 44, he won at La Plata. In 44, he tied for first with Pilnik, Hermann Pilnik. That was at Mar del Plata. He scored 12 out of 15 there. In 1945, Najdorf won Buenos Aires. Actually, it was the Roberto Grau Memorial at Buenos Aires. And then he won Mar del Plata 1945. He repeated there in 46. He won at Rio de Janeiro in 46. He won at Prague. He won at Barcelona in 46. In 47, he won again at Mar del Plata. He won at Venice in 48. This guy was just a dynamo in chess. In 49, Miguel Najdorf tied for first with Stelberg again at Buenos Aires. In 50, he won at Amsterdam. That was quite a showing, ahead of the likes of Reshevsky, Stelberg, Gligurich, Vasha Pirtz, Dr. Max Erve. He also won at Bled in 1950. He was ranked number 2 in the world from 47 to 49 and should have been given a seat at the 1948 World Chess Championship tournament organized by FIDE. It was the first World Championship in the hands of FIDE, but he was not invited. In a 1947 interview, he said, quote, "I believe that I'm none inferior to any of the players who are to participate in the next World Championship. Botvinnik, Fine, Reshevsky, Kedes, Erve, none of these have a better record than I. I've played much less than they have, admittedly, but I am satisfied with my results." Pressure from the Soviet Federation, perhaps pushed by Botvinnik, may have been responsible for keeping Najdorf out of the event. Is anybody here surprised by the fact that the very first time FIDE got their hands on the World Championship, it was surrounded by conspiracy and corruption? No surprise. That is FIDE's modus operandus, corruption and conspiracy. Anyway, there's more than you ever wanted to know about Miguel Najdorf. Pawn A6, Najdorf's variation of the Sicilian defense. Bishop G5, pawn E6, pawn F4, bishop E7, queen F3, queen C7, the traditional line, queenside castles, queen's knight to D7 is your main line, pawn G4, pawn B5, bishop takes the knight, knight takes the bishop, pawn G5 sends the knight back to D7, now pawn A3, and Bobby with bishop B7. Not the book move, and the bot gives it a question mark. Rook B8 being indicated as the best choice here, and that is the book move according to Volume B, Section 99 of your Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. We play Rook B8, and after H4 here, we play B4. A takes B4, and Rook takes the B-man. Volume B, Section 99. Bobby lining up with his opponent's queen and rook. Bishop B7. King B1, marked inaccurate. H4 being called for here. The most frequent move is Bishop H3. Bishop H3 and Knight C5. Pawn B4, Knight to A4. Strange move. This is really the most frequent line, but the point is we're opening up the file where white's king is, so we don't mind messing with our pawns over here. Right, not played in this game, O'Kelly with king B1, now Bobby with D5. That gets a question mark, and kingside castles called for here. Well, I thought G6 is an option here, just to withstand this onslaught of pawns, and you can castle to the queenside instead. For example, after h4, I'll queenside castle, and I'll get a star. Back, back, back. D5 by Bobby Fischer. He takes the D, man. He's going to have to get his bishop on G2, I'm sure here. Knight B6. Here it is, bishop G2. And black needs to beware of queen E2. Knight takes D5 here. Knight takes knight. And bishop takes the knight, hitting the queen. Queen G4. And we've got the threat of F5 here, don't we? Bishop takes the bishop. Queen takes the bishop. Black finally castles. Now F5 is played. Pawn takes pawn. Oh, Bobby offered a draw there. And O'Kelly accepted. Very fast 20-move draw. Let's look at those numbers. 96.3 for O'Kelly, 94.1 for Bobby Fischer. His single game rating 2,900. What can we say?